Second advisor forum for the fall semester. My name is Ross Hawkins. I am the director of the Academic Advising and Transfer Center, and I am so grateful that you have chosen to spend an hour participating in the advisor training and development program and being in this Zoom meeting. As we did in our previous advisor forum, please remember to enter your first and last name in the chat feature so we can give Master Advisor credit to all those who are attending today. We are recording this advisor forum, so if you find this information to be beneficial and you think others in your areas would benefit from watching this advisor forum, please let me know. We're still in the process of finding the best place to post the Zoom recording, since this is the first time that as an office we've decided to record advisor forums, but there will be information about that in the near future. And in the meantime, you can always reach out to me directly if you have questions. Today, I am excited to introduce Christina Bowles from the Academic Advising and Transfer Center and Jamie Ross from Adult Student Services, who are here to present on a session regarding distance advising, which I know all of us have already jumped into this new world of advising. But now hopefully we can be a bit more intentional, since we've had some opportunities to experience distance advising and learn from some of the tips and best practices that Christina and Jamie will share with us today. So Jamie or Christina, if you wouldn't mind, probably here in about 10 minutes, if you could just do a reminder for people to enter their names in the chat room, just in case a few people join while you're presenting. But other than that, I'm going to turn it over to Christina and Jamie.
Hello, can anyone hear me?
Oh, hi Tim. Yep, we can hear you.
Wonderful. Hey, I've got to shut my jaws. Could one of you guys, sign me in for today, being I got to shut my voice off?
Yep, we can take care of that for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you see the right screen, Christina?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so hello everybody. Again, my name is Jamie Ross. I work in Adult Student Services as Director of Adult Student Services. So we work with a lot of non-traditional students, and I'll let Christina talk about her job a little bit.
Absolutely. So my name is Christina Bowles. I'm in the Academic Advising and Transfer Center, and I did not become an expert in distance advising until this semester. So brand new, but I think from another perspective that I'm offering to this as well will be a little bit from teaching to some degree, because GEP 101 has been offered as a blended course this semester. So I will be speaking a little bit about that, and then just the experiences I've had working with students over the summer and this semester.
And then I also wanted to give a shout out to Mandy Muse, I have them listed wrong. Mandy Muse in Crim and Brittany Wise in Psychology. I did not catch that, but they assisted with putting together this presentation for Makata and Nakata. So we've kind of revised it a little bit, added to it, kept some of the things that we came up with previously, and then built from it. So I'll go over the why a little bit and talk about why this is so timely right now. Getting used to advising from a distance, it's definitely been an adjustment for a lot of people on campus. And COVID happening, back in March, and kind of forcing people's hands on making these adjustments and changes, and changing how they operate, changing how they connect with students. Universities across the country have really had to just jump in head first, even though it was kind of uncomfortable for some people. But I think for the most part, from what I've heard, everyone on campus, most people on campus have really embraced it and have really embraced technology, and students have been really excited about the changes that have been made for a lot of offices. Accessibility has been improved, students being able to contact advisors in different ways and set up appointments in different ways. So a lot of good things have come out of it, and we're excited to kind of share how we've kind of changed some practices and embraced new technology and tools. So Who are these students that are kind of looking for more support online, looking for online programs, looking for online student services? There are a number of different reasons why students are seeking out service and schooling in this way. So in adult student services, we work with a number of veteran students who are stationed overseas, learners who are studying abroad, adult learners who are working full-time. We've got mothers whose kids are going to school for the first time. They've been staying at home and they're ready to pursue an education for themselves. And many times they can't make a full-time commitment to be on campus, so they're going to be learning remotely. Students who are going back home. I was contacted by a number of students who were planning on being traditional students this fall, but because of COVID, they've decided to be 100% online, at least for the fall and possibly for the spring semester. So we talked through that and made them aware of what an online semester would look like for them. Students with disabilities also sometimes are pursuing schooling remotely. Many first-generation students, first-time new college students who have no experience with college before, are attempting to complete a degree either 100% online or in a hybrid fashion. And then we've got a number of returning students, caregivers, and students with health issues too in the mix. So it's a pretty broad demographic that we are assisting in the online population.
Awesome. So now we're going to talk about some of the hurdles. I've already had one reference to making sure that we put the pivot scene in this PowerPoint. So there you go. So we're going to talk about some of the hurdles. And again, if there are anything, especially on this screen, that we don't cover that you've experienced, feel free to put those in the chat, because again, I know a lot of this is really new to a lot of us, and there might be some very unique circumstances that come up or have come up in the past. So I'm just going to highlight some of these things. The first thing is internet service. I was listening to NPR this morning, in fact, and they were talking about COVID and the achievement gap, and that a lot of rural areas don't have, not to pick on people who live in rural areas, but the fact of the matter is a lot of places don't have reliable internet service. And so some of our students may be experiencing that. A knowledge of campus services and procedures and policies. I feel like when students are on campus, they are kind of experiencing, like, learning about these services very organically through flyers and just interactions with other folks. But right now, these students are, if they're remote, and especially if they're taking all online classes, may not be aware of what's offered to them. And in addition to that, I feel like a lot of our campus services are now expanding their online offerings out of necessity, really, but it's been, I think, fantastic for our students that are online. And so just as an advisor, I very much appreciate that because simply our online students, I think, will benefit now from recent events, if we're looking for a silver lining. So certainly those campus services, I think, have been expanded and very well, which is nice. The only request I would have as an advisor is don't have students print things off. Send them a fillable PDF, find ways, creative ways for them to not have to print things off and to send those in electronically, which I think a lot of us are doing that as well. One of the things you might run into for students that are wanting to graduate with an online degree are if they're in a non-comprehensive major and there's not an online option for the minor they want to pursue. So that can sometimes be a concern. Academic integrity is certainly a concern as well. Again, I feel like students on campus, since it feels more comfortable and feels more like what they've experienced in the past, might be more in tune with what our academic integrity policies are, but online classes are not exempt from those policies. And so making sure that students are aware of that, like you're in an online class and maybe your instructor isn't using Respondus or some other similar tool for your test, but this doesn't mean that it's necessarily an open book exam. Like, have those conversations with your instructors to make sure you're not violating academic integrity policies. Students, I think, also are learning for the first time how to manage expectations of an online class. Those of us teaching GEP 101 can definitely attest to this. I have students that are, actively participating in person, but they're not doing the online content. And I think either it's falling off of their radar, it's slipping through the cracks, or maybe they're just genuinely not 100% sure like what's expected of them. So having those conversations as well, like reminding students, especially if they're in a blended class, you may be attending in person, but please make sure that you're viewing Blackboard and the assignments and keeping up with the online work as well. And then proctored exams, students who are, of course, in Springfield, our testing center is still open. Students can go into the testing center for proctored exams, but even students that are maybe in Kansas City or St. Louis, have those conversations with them as well. Students may not be aware that they are actually, in some cases, physically required to go to a location for an exam. So make sure and communicate that to them as well. I touched on time management a little bit already, just with the managing expectations for online classes, but students that are completely online, I know we kind of use the 2-for-1 model. So a student who is enrolled in 15 credit hours is expected to spend 30 hours outside of class in order to succeed and to make, you know, good grades in their classes, however that might look for them. And so that's what we usually tell students, and that's why 15 hours is considered full time. For an online student, that rule is generally, I would tell that student who's enrolled in 15 hours of online classes, you're going to expect to spend 40 hours a week just on your classes. And so just try to help them manage those expectations. Work-life balance, I've unfortunately heard students this semester say, well, since we're all online, I'm going to go ahead and work full-time. Again, letting students know, like, you're not in class, but that doesn't mean that you can effectively manage a 40-hour job and then also a full-time online class schedule. Other things to kind of consider, I mentioned online programs already. There are some majors that don't have online options, and so kind of, you know, working with students on that. Specific courses that are not offered online, Math 101 is not offered online, and so students who need that preparation will have to either take it in person or find other ways to be able to meet that requirement in order to be able to take their upper level math courses. Same thing with some of our physical sciences, and then of course periodicity, like when are these courses offered. So again, if there's any other hurdles that you all have experienced, certainly feel free to put those in the chat. And then Jamie, if there's nothing else you want to add, I'm free to move on. Okay, so communication. We're going to talk about some methods of communication with our students while they're online. And we're going to cover 3 primary ones: phone, email, and then Zoom. Zoom is preferred, but we'll talk about phone and email first. So phone is really great because it's easier to discern emotions from a student. Yesterday, I had an advisee call the Academic Advising and Transfer Center. She unfortunately was in a car accident this semester and just needed help with, maybe needing to withdraw. She's not able to look at bright screens right now, so email was off the table. So she and I spent a lot of time on the phone yesterday, and through that process, I was able to really tell the stress that this is having on her and the toll that it's taking. And then for me as an advisor, I feel like I'm able to hopefully express my concern and care for the student much easier over phone than I would over email. And so those are definitely reasons that phone can be a great and effective communication tool. You can ask, is this a good time to talk? And then maybe schedule another time if the student's in the middle of something. Anticipate some silence, especially if there might be a bad connection. Those of us that remember the "can you hear me now" commercials, that's kind of what I think of, with people who are maybe on a cell phone and might cut out. So definitely anticipate that and kind of wait to see if maybe you lost them, because if you did, then it's, well, where did I lose you? I need to kind of start over. Anticipate distractions. Now, it makes me sad to admit this because I worry about our students, but I've had so many students on phone appointments or on phone calls that are driving or at work. They're like in the break room at work. So definitely distractions are much, I think, more prevalent with phone calls because you know how it is, kind of taken in between things, or if you're driving, you've got Bluetooth or whatever the case might be. So definitely anticipate distractions when you're on the phone. Email can be useful, certainly, but some of the things that you want to consider is that we typically look at it as like an administrative task. So, if you, like I set time in the morning every morning to check my email first thing. So like 8 to 8:30 as I'm checking email. I put a little time at the end of the day to kind of wrap up any emails. Throughout the day, I'm just kind of checking it, responding to questions. So it doesn't feel like advising all the time. And I think having to change my mindset has been really important since now I'm using email as a more of an advising tool. So I try to take time to respond. If a student has a very detailed question that they're asking me, I might, I might want to set aside 15 minutes to respond to that email fully so I can answer their questions as though we were meeting in person, especially if we're not able to meet. Also, anticipate the students' needs and don't assume that they're asking the right questions, especially with our first-time new and college students. They might not be using the right terminology, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't try to explore and find out what their needs really are. So even as a full-time staff member at Missouri State, I had been communicating with HR early on with COVID because, you know, I have a daughter who is at home. And so we were trying to discuss some of my options for that and trying to figure everything out. And in that process, I wasn't using the right terminology for the type of leave that I thought I could use. And so my answers, like my questions were never really fully answered until we came to that realization that I was asking the wrong question. So I think that it's really important for us to remember that our students may not be asking the quote unquote right question, but we should try to anticipate their needs. Also, if a student is asking about something financial aid related, how does that bleed into other areas and vice versa? So it's a little bit more work, I think, on the front end, but one, our students will not respond with as many questions, so that could save time. And then two, I really feel like it's a great service to the students to provide them with maybe more information than what you think they need, but anticipating what their extra needs might be based on the conversation that you have. Also, integrating interpersonal exchanges via email. I am pro emoji. That probably doesn't come as a surprise to anybody. Now, certainly there are instances where I would not use emojis if you know that you need to be more professional or whatever the case might be. I totally understand that. Also, maybe talk to your supervisor or your office. Like, is there, you know, a blanket, like, does your supervisor prefer that you not use that sort of talk with, or that sort of communication with students? I think emojis can be very helpful, especially just to communicate a warm smile or, you know, things of that nature that you might communicate in person or on phone. And then probably the best use of email is that it can be used as a historical reference. And so I will typically put emails into advising notes, especially if it is incredibly relevant to the student's academic record, or I might just put even just like a summary. Like Jamie and I communicated via email today. She had this question and this is what I suggested to her. So yeah, certainly can be useful. So Zoom is probably what's most preferred for lots of reasons. First, it most closely resembles our face-to-face interactions with students. And so I think that for, you know, for those reasons, especially, we kind of, like what I mentioned on the phone with my student that I met with yesterday, I could tell that she was, I mean, aside from the situation, obviously that would be distressing, but I could tell even just from her voice how stressed out that she was. And then by the end of the phone call, I could hear her relief. And so knowing that I had done an effective job of helping her just kind of, you know, understand that this is going to be okay. So with Zoom, you can see your students, you can see if they look tired, you can see if they're smiling or if they look concerned, you can see if they're distracted. And so those are definitely things I think are beneficial to Zoom. Also, again, with the distractions, again, I've had students Zoom in while they're driving, and of course they're not using the video, but then I'm just like, I can hear traffic, like I know that you're in your car. And so, but I think for the most part, Zoom does help mitigate those distractions because students will hopefully know that they're on video. Not to say that I have not had students get on a Zoom meeting in bed or suddenly realize, oh, I'm on video, and like, you know, fix their hair or whatever. And so, but I think for the most part, it does help mitigate those distractions. And then for collaborative engagement, I mean, this is a perfect example. We've hopefully gotten used to screen sharing. I can share my screen with my students and show them how to do things. And then if they have a question, I'm like, oh, you can, why don't you share your screen with me? And then I can see what they have. I would preface that with, if you show me your screen, I can see everything. So make sure students are aware of that. But that does allow you to kind of have that collaboration of looking to see what the student is doing as well. The downside, of course, technical difficulties. I've had students that their audio hasn't been working, and so we've just had to do chat. And so we'll talk about backup plans and things like that here in a minute or in a little bit, but that's definitely a downside to Zoom, is the technical difficulties the student might experience.
All right, now we're getting into all of it's fun, right? But getting into some more of the fun stuff. So tools and technology. Move on to the next slide. All right, so there's so much out there. There's so many tools, so many different types of technology that we have access to that help to make our processes run a little bit more efficiently. But we're just going to touch on a few of them today, and a few of them we've already talked about. So under web conferencing, of course, Christina just covered Zoom, but Microsoft Teams is also a very good option for those who might not, just really take to Zoom. Microsoft Teams is bundled in with our Microsoft Office 365 suite. So if you add that app to your desktop or laptop, you can do screen sharing. It ties to the Missouri State Directory, so you can search for students through it. You can have quick chats with students, chats with colleagues across campuses from different offices, file sharing. It's just, there are a lot of things you can do in Microsoft Teams. So if you haven't checked out Teams, I highly recommend that you check it out and see what kind of functionality exists that might make your workspace a little bit more efficient. Online scheduling, my office has used You Can Book Me since 2014, so I'm very familiar with You Can Book Me and its functionality. What it can do is it ties to your Microsoft Outlook calendar, and then it displays your availability to students, and it also has the availability to customize questions. You can add drop downs, you can make it to where they have to answer in a block of text. You can make questions required or optional. You can completely manage your availability through your Outlook calendar, so you don't even have to go into the You Can Book Me dashboard. You can manage your availability just straight from Outlook as you would normally. So if you're on vacation, you can block out a week and then it'll instantaneously sync up with your You Can Book Me page on whatever website or web page you decided to put your link on. Calendly works kind of similarly. I don't have as much experience with Calendly, but Christina, do you want to touch on that a little bit? Maybe highlight some of the differences?
Yeah, absolutely. So I emailed an advisor in the McQuarrie College of Health and Human Services because I know they use Calendly, and some of the pros, much like You Can Book Me, it does sync with Outlook, so events can automatically generate in an Outlook calendar. It also syncs with Zoom, so you can send a link to the students for the Zoom meeting as well. It's easy to modify. You can turn it on and turn it off pretty easily as well, and creating custom names for appointments and modifying links. And so I think a lot of the functionality is similar. Some of the cons, because you just got to really find what is the right fit for you. There's a text message reminder option, but you have to pay extra for that. It does have a yearly subscription cost, which again, I think You Can Book Me has a subscription cost as well. And there's like extra for like pro options if you want to do a pro option for Calendly. Time zones can be a challenge. So with Calendly, like learning to lock in the time zone, that can be confusing, especially if there are students that are on, that are in different time zones. So kind of keeping that in mind as well. And then I think the other thing is that it creates like a calendar request that goes to the student's email, but then once the student accepts it, like they think that they can't find the link, but it's really just in their Outlook calendar. So that could really just be more like user error kinds of things. But again, I would say try to maybe explore both and see which one works better for you. And yeah, thank you, Jamie, because yeah, I think using the online tools, especially for calendars, can take a little bit getting used to. Much like Jamie as well, we use You Can Book Me in the Academic Advising and Transfer Center. I really like it. I've not had any problems with it. Every once in a while, I'll have a student accept a calendar invite for a meeting, and for some reason, my Zoom link doesn't go through, but that's happened very rarely, and I can usually catch it in time. So that's been the only issue that I've had with You Can Book Me.
Okay, and then texting, Google Text is texting that's free. You can allow people, when we transitioned in March to working from home, set up a Google Voice number. So Google Text works the same way. So if you have a Google Voice number already set up, you can text students one-on-one through it. So if you don't want to be texting from your phone, you can even text from a computer. So you can use your computer, log into your Google Voice, and send a text message to a student. And again, that's a one-on-one type of service. It's not something you would use for bulk text messaging, like is utilized, Signalvine is utilized for what I'm hearing, text messaging. And I know Dr. Wood's in on this web conference. I don't know if she's available to talk about Signalvine a little bit, but I know that her department is using Signalvine to contact students via text messages with various messaging. And then Microsoft Office suite tools. I use Microsoft Office 365 a lot. So I use OneDrive, I use SharePoint, do a lot of file sharing with students, create a lot of living documents in there for students who maybe are undergoing a SAP and have questions, and or maybe just, you know, are working on a document that they want my input on. We use that to kind of collaborate virtually. So Microsoft Office 365 has a lot of tools within it that I use to help support students and also to keep myself organized. There's also a tool in Microsoft Office called, is it Loom, Christina, that you were going to talk about?
Yeah, so there's a couple. So on Microsoft Office, one of the tools that I've used, not extensively, but I have used for uploading videos is Stream. And so Microsoft Office Stream like allows you to upload videos much like YouTube, but I think it's safer because students can log in. And then it also does like closed captioning as well. Maybe not like really, really great closed captioning, but for the fact that it's free, I think it does pretty well. Loom is not a Microsoft Office product, but it's something that we've used in our office to create videos. It's really user-friendly. It's LOOM. And so if you search for it, you can do like the desktop application, or you can set up an online account. I even did a Loom video, I guess it was last week. I had students in my GEP class had a ton of questions about one of the assignments. And I was finding that I was the 4-year plan assignment, and I was finding that I was meeting with a lot of my students one-on-one, which I'm happy to do. But after like almost 2 hours of meeting with students, I thought, I'm just gonna make a video. And so I just pulled up Loom. I made a quick 5 to 7 minute video. This is what you need to do. It wasn't super polished, but it was really easy. And then I was able to just send that link to my students. So that Luke Thomas in our office is actually the one who suggested that we use Loom for some of our videos. It's really, really easy to use. And I'm just recommending it. It's not a Microsoft Office product, but I definitely recommend it if you just need to make a quick video for something.
And then Sway is also something that's kind of bundled in our Microsoft Office 365 by default. You can create really nice newsletters, blogs. If your job calls for that type of work, I would definitely recommend checking out that function because it is very user-friendly. There are a lot of really great templates on it. There is also Microsoft Forms within our Office 365 account where you can create some quick forms or surveys. But again, there's a lot of functionality involved in it, and there are a lot of things in there. So if you have a chance, go in there and check out. There's a box on the bottom. It says other apps, and you can click on it, and then it'll display all of the other apps and what their functions are. So there's a lot of really handy stuff hidden in there. And then for online student support services, a lot of offices, of course, due to COVID, have transitioned services to be available 100% online. And I've included links to each of these pages, and we'll make this PowerPoint shareable. So I'm going to put it in a OneDrive folder and then add everyone that has registered for this forum into the OneDrive folder so that you can access these when you would like to look at them. Adult Student Services, we maintain a list of all 100% online programs, 100% online minors for graduate and undergraduate programs available at Missouri State. So if you ever are curious about what programs are available 100% online, feel free to visit Adult Student Services Missouri State Online. Bear Claw has moved all of their services remotely as well, so I encourage you to check out their page. They've done a really good job of updating and keeping current with what their offerings are in terms of supporting students. Career Center has a way to book appointments also remotely, so if you go to their homepage, you can see how they're assisting students at a distance. And then Computer Help Desk. One thing I'd like to really talk about with Computer Help Desk is that they've, excuse me, they've created a form that they really would prefer students utilize versus emailing and calling. It helps them just to respond in a more efficient manner. It's at the very top of their page. There's a hyperlink that asks students to go ahead and complete a form so that they can kind of queue those requests and better respond to students' issues. The Disability Resource Center and Learning Diagnostic Clinic are also assisting students virtually. From what Justin has told me, their office does have a physical presence, of course. They want to make sure people are masked when they come, but all student appointments are being handled remotely. The Proctoring Center is still proctoring tests, but until October 11th, they will not be proctoring exams on Saturdays and Sundays due to some staffing issues that they're experiencing currently. So that's something to be aware of when you're working with students on helping them get tests scheduled for proctoring. And then the academic care team. Christina, do you want to touch on the academic care team, or Dr. Wood, either one?
Yeah, absolutely. So the academic care team, there's a form on the Missouri State website, and I can send the link in the chat. But if you do have students that you're concerned about and their academic coaches that can be paired up with them, I think primarily, and I mean, definitely correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like this is probably geared more towards like first year students. But if you have any students that you're concerned about that you think could benefit from academic coaching, you can submit their information through the form and they'll be paired up with an academic coach. You'll get notification that the student has been paired up with somebody. I've already recommended, I know one student in my GEP class because he just had some concern. I just had some concerns and thought he could use a little extra help. And so he's been paired up with a coach. And so you'll get an update for that information as well. But the reason why we wanted to include this is because I think especially this semester and with first time new and college students and with everything just being so incredibly different, they are needing, at least in my experience, I feel like they're needing a little extra help more so than I've experienced in the past.
So online advising can be a little bit tricky sometimes if you're not careful. So that's why I picked this particular GIF or GIF. I don't know what you subscribe to in terms of how you say the word, but I'm a GIF girl. So I'm going to go ahead and click on to the next slide, and we can talk about some ways to help prepare before the appointment ever happens. So some steps you can take to better organize yourself before any student before the appointment takes place. So for something that I do, I implement helpful technology measures. I use QuickParts a lot. I don't know how many people here utilize QuickParts, but it has really helped me in terms of getting information to students in a quick way, and especially information that I find myself consistently sharing to students. So I've been able to capture text, like paragraphs that I find myself constantly retyping and retyping, save them in a quick part. I pull them into a blank email. I personalize it, customize it with, hey, hope your family's doing well, hope the move went well. And then I include the answer to the question that they may have, or I'm anticipating that they might have, and then send it off to them. Zoom waiting room is also something, and now with the changes to Zoom, that's going to be something that I think everyone's going to have some experience with, but it is nice to have that Zoom waiting room, both for security and to let the student know I'm in the right place. It says Christina's waiting room. I know I'm here, and you can acknowledge the student while they're in the waiting room as well. So if you're in a meeting with another student, you see a student pop into your waiting room while you're wrapping up with another student, you can click that chat box right there and say, hey, I see you. I'm wrapping up with another student. It might be, 5 more minutes. So hang tight, or, you can log off and log back in again in 5 minutes. But that's a really nice function of Zoom. Communicate the how. I think this is really important for students, especially first-time new and college students who aren't really sure of what they need to be bringing to the table when they meet with their advisor for the first time. So being really clear about the appointment details, what your expectations are, the actual meeting information. So if the student set up a Zoom meeting, do you want them to click the link? Are you going to be sending a link? What should they be looking for from you? What happens if a student needs to cancel? Maybe include all of that information in that initial email before you have the appointment so that they know what steps to take if something happens. And so they can just pull that email up and reference it if one of those things happen, so that they can accurately cancel with you or reschedule. And if there's a way to do that, definitely include that within that email. Communicate, Christina, did you want to add anything to that, the how? No? Okay. And then communicate expectations, I kind of covered that a little bit too. So if you have an advising syllabus, or if you have checklists that you want a student to make sure to complete prior to meeting with you, definitely communicate that as well and let them know, before I meet with you, I expect you to maybe run a trial schedule or be familiar with your audit or set up your Missouri State email. Sometimes students haven't set up an email before meeting with an advisor, and that's something that can definitely help them and expedite the process, before meeting with you. And then helpful prep resources. If you do have departmental checklists created, make that easily accessible to students ahead of time, especially if it'll help with your time in meeting with a student. So if you have a departmental checklist ready to go, that's probably something that I would share before the appointment happens, so that a student might have questions based off of that checklist too. So it might help a student better prepare to meet with you as well. And then Christina shared a really nice Zoom etiquette document as well. So I'm going to try to pull that up.
Yeah, I can't take credit for this. This is actually John Turner sent it to first year programs, who sent it out to all of us to teach GEP, because he used it for his class for his students. And I thought it was really helpful. And so I just kind of wanted to pass it along and share it to everybody as well, because things that students might not be 100% aware of, like being mindful of your surroundings, like what do you have on your walls? What are you wearing? Are you wearing clothes? Like those sorts of things that students may not necessarily be thinking about. So yeah, I mean, those are there. I would definitely encourage you to send that out to your students, or at least have these conversations with them. Again, a lot of this seems like common sense, but I cannot tell you how many times, especially early on, I would start to zoom in with a student, and then they would notice that the camera was on, and then they would like suddenly sit up, or they would like grab a blanket or something. It just seems like it was very obvious that they were not prepared to be seen. So kind of keeping all of those things in mind, I think, are good to send.
All right. Did you have anything else, Christina, on this slide? Are you good? Okay. Let me go ahead and click along. All right. And then during the appointment, so I've had students, and Christina touched on this a little bit earlier, where I did all of the pre-prep for the student. I said, okay, be in front of a computer, make sure you are available, make sure you have internet connection, because I want to go through things with you. And then when our appointment happens, they're on the phone in the car because they got called into work. And this is literally the only time they have to talk about the semester. Maybe it's the Friday before semester starts. And so it's kind of establishing what access they have from the very beginning of the appointment will help. So asking, okay, so are you in front of a computer right now? If you're not, just keep in mind after this, I'm going to send you an email that includes all of the links that I'm going to talk about, or all of the steps that I'd like you to take, or next steps, or links to the scholarship application. So establish their technological ability from the beginning, and don't just assume that they're in a space that you're assuming they're in, because they may not be. So secure backup contact information. So at the beginning of a call as well, I always ask them, is this a good time to talk? If we get cut off, how would you like me to contact you? Is there a better number to reach you at? How much time do you have to have this conversation? Sometimes they say, I only have 15 minutes, I'm on break. So having that conversation early on too helps me to establish what type of information I can share in the amount of time that I have possible to talk to the student. Screen sharing benefits. Christina, you wanted to go over that piece?
Oh yeah, I kind of mentioned it earlier, but I think again, just the ability to kind of show a student how to do something, and for them to show you what they're doing in case there's any kind of registration errors and that sort of thing. I know, like students physically in my office, I would turn my computer screen to show them what I was looking at. And so now I'm able to pull up the catalog or pull up the degree audit and go over all of that with them. So I really think that screen sharing is incredibly beneficial. I share my whole screen just because if I noticed that if I navigated away from something, then the students were still on that previous screen. And so just like I would tell my students, I make sure that there's nothing that could potentially be incriminating or offensive on my desktop. I don't imagine that there ever is, but just making sure that it's ready for me to share. And then I just share my whole screen. That way, if I navigate away from something, then I can pull, I can show them something else without worrying about having to reshare. And then of course, making sure in Zoom that you allow the participant to share as well, if you want the student to be able to share their screen with you.
Christina covered, anticipating technology issues. So it's always good during the appointment to say, if audio cuts out, there is a chat feature, and maybe walk the student or ask them if they're familiar with the chat feature and how to use it, and maybe walk them through how to utilize that, or send a test message through it to make sure that they're seeing it. The file sharing function is nice as well, so you can send files to them so that both of you can look at them, or do the screen sharing option that Christina talked about. And then ending an appointment virtually versus ending appointment in person is a little bit different. So sometimes there's that awkward, at the end where it just keeps going and going and going, and you have a student, waiting for you. So Christina wanted to share some ideas with you about ending virtual appointments and how she does that.
Yeah, I usually would just end them like I would like if I'm in the office, because to Jamie's point, it's like I think with online, we tend to kind of run things to the limit, or like kind of stay on, because it's like, well, even if you have an appointment right after this, you don't have to go anywhere, right? And so it's I think we're just starting to like kind of take advantage of the time. And I think students are doing that to some degree as well. And so I just use the same cues I've used before, like, oh, even if I don't have someone in the waiting room, I might say, oh, I've got a person in the waiting room. I'm going to have to get with you later. Or, I hate to, lie to my students, but if there is something coming up, I think it's perfectly appropriate to say, well, that's all the time I have right now. If we need to reschedule another meeting, we can. And so trying to use those same cues, but I feel like it is a bit more awkward with online, because I feel like we're just kind of used to taking advantage of those extra few minutes that we would normally need for travel or commuting.
Okay, and then things to think about post-appointment when you're advising students remotely. Again, I think it's important to follow up with specific action items. So if there are things that you went over that a student needs to take action on, and something can't happen until that student takes action on it, I think it's important to highlight those things so that they understand, if I don't do this, then X won't happen. Because a lot of times, especially new students, don't understand the consequences of me not doing this equals this thing not happening next. So including suggested and required deadlines, that includes deadlines for submitting documents or applications, or those electronic documents that you created for your individual departments, including all of those in your follow-up communication so that a student has that in one handy email is important, again, for archival purposes and for you to reference later if you need to. Including helpful hyperlinks. Again, I can't underestimate the value of including hyperlinks for students, because things change. So policies change, wording changes. So copying and pasting, pieces from pages or old documents, it might not be as timely, or it might be outdated. So including hyperlinks guarantees that that information is, constantly being updated and refreshed. And then advising notes. Some advisors I know take advising notes during the appointment, some wait until after. The beauty of online advising is that you're already usually, in front of a computer or connected. And so pulling up a Word document or pulling up an email or an email draft and typing those advising notes while you're meeting with the student kind of kill two birds with one stone. So that's a nice benefit of advising remotely, because you're already connected to that technology. And then again, including specifics. So being very specific about what it is the student needs to do next. Attachments, any documents that are relevant to the student's interests, I think are important for a student. So if they need to complete a SAP document, or if you have a template that you want them to fill out, or if you have a departmental document that you think that is important for them to reference, definitely include that in your follow-up information. And then communicate how you like to schedule appointments with students going forward. So if you're able to meet with a student mid-semester, definitely include that and say, I would like you to follow up with me in September, my online calendar, or here's how you schedule with me. Otherwise, students are kind of left feeling in the dark about what they're supposed to do next. If they're supposed to reach out, I've heard from a lot of them that say, I don't want to bother anybody. I don't want to seem like a nuisance. So putting that out there and letting students know, I'm here for you. So I'm here for you when you need me. Here's the appropriate way to contact me. and here's the time of year that would be best for you to reach out and kind of start thinking about next semester plans. And then underscoring important deadlines and next steps. Oftentimes students don't understand that they need to do a FAFSA every year. So if they're getting federal funding, they don't understand they need to do a FAFSA. So making them aware of the academic calendar is something that I cover with my students a lot. I send them a link to the academic calendar. I talk to them about how to add those iCal links to their calendar so that it just populates their calendar with those dates and deadlines. And that's been really helpful for students so that it's always there. There's a reminder there for them, and they can see those deadlines as they approach during the semester. And that is it. We wanted to add some levity because things have just been so heavy. It feels like for the past 6 months in the world. And so we hope that you've gained some information or technology or tools or knowledge that you didn't otherwise have prior to joining us here. And if you have questions about anything we covered, we are completely open to visiting with you one-on-one. I'm in the admin for the campus for You Can Book Me. So if you're interested in getting a You Can Book Me account set up, you can contact me and I can talk to you about cost and how that works. So definitely reach out to me. I'd love to have that conversation with you if you have any further questions on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the only other piece of advice that I wanted to kind of throw in, and we may have covered it a little bit, but especially for students who are using screen readers, I know I'm sending a lot more links in emails than I used to. So instead of sending full links, I'm hyperlinking text. And so if I have something I want them to reference, I would definitely encourage you to try to put that into practice a bit more if you haven't already. Also, it just makes like emails a lot. I mean, when we're reading so much, it's just so much easier to see and like digest without having these like super long links. Say, make sure and schedule an appointment with the Bear Claw for math, and then like hyperlink Bear Claw to the document that the student might need or their website or something like that if you want to include that information. Any other tips or questions or anything that you all have experienced? I mean, like I said, I'm definitely not an expert. I was just sharing some of my personal experiences from the last few months, but not something I've been doing for very long.
I've just started using the, I'm forgetting what it is now. The quick parts function within Outlook, because before Christine and I had talked about it. So before I was using the signature line a lot to pre-populate information that I was sending all the time because students have issues with getting their emails set up, and I was constantly sending them, links for instructions on how to set up your email. And so this quick parts functionality, I don't know if I can share it real quick, but let me see. Can you, hold on. Can you see that blank email right there?
Yep.
So within here, I've set up a lot of just things that I constantly talk about to students, and you can add several different quick parts to it. So if you need to mix and match information, it's just a really quick way to get a lot of information out with hyperlinks. Like Christina said, hyperlinking these are great, but sometimes I add these to advising notes and the hyperlinks doesn't take in the advising notes. So when I know that I'm going to be adding something to an advising note, I usually leave the whole link there so that it copies over. But the quick parts has been just such a time saver for me personally. And then there's a screenshot option in Outlook too. I don't know if anyone's aware of that, but taking a screenshot to an available window that you have open, you can pop in a screenshot really quickly too within Outlook. And that's been a time saver for me as well. So just little things like that it make life a little bit easier and a little bit happier. So yeah. But I'm happy to talk with anybody, and we're, like Christina said, definitely not an expert. So if you all have things that make it a little bit easier, please share. I would love to hear those things too.
I agree with Kelly about that being one of my favorite tips from Jamie, the quick parts, because when we were preparing for this and she told me about it, I was like, what? Because I've been using signatures, but then, yeah, if you have like multiple things you want to tell a student, I can't do like multiple signatures. And so I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah. Well, it's good to see everybody. Ross, are you gonna, I don't know what the next steps are, so I'm gonna let you take over.
Well, the next step is just to say thank you, Christina, and thank you, Jamie, for such a wonderful presentation. There's several comments coming through the chat. People are very grateful for this opportunity, so I'm appreciative of the both of you for presenting such great information that will ultimately impact the students we advise. Again, Jamie has agreed to share the information with all the participants, so we appreciate that.
All the people who are signed up. So if you didn't
Yeah.
sign up, then I guess let one of us know. I don't know. Can they sign? They can't sign up after it's already passed, can they? On the okay, so maybe let us know if you didn't sign up for the session. Then we won't have you on the roster. So just let us know. We can send that information to you.
That is great. I did want to let everyone know that unfortunately we did have to cancel Mission Diploma, which was scheduled for next week when we received the announcement that the university is going to be closed next Thursday and Friday for a deep cleaning, which is a wonderful thing that they're doing. It did conflict with our Mission Diploma event, which was going to be held in the Bear Claw. So know that that event has been canceled. We are looking at possibly rescheduling that either sometime later this semester or in the spring semester. And please continue to check Inside Missouri State for the latest information on the fall 2020 Advisor Forum Series. Our next one will be Dr. Kyler Sherman Wilkins, who is going to be giving a powerful session on racial sensitivity and talking about inclusivity in what we do. So please continue to join us for future advisor sessions via Zoom. And thank you all for being here. Have a wonderful Wednesday afternoon.
Ross, there was a question in the chat about, is this the first advisor form available on video? I'm assuming we also recorded the last one, but I couldn't remember.
We did. We actually recorded the last one as well. And for those that are interested in watching those Zoom videos, please let me know. And Christina, that's something that we'll talk about soon, about where to store those videos and how we can best use those for training and development purposes. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye.